2.4, the rest of this chapter, we're going to get into some more absolute values, but for this part, it's not going to be too difficult. There's only two parts, really only two templates we have to do for today. All you're going to do is evaluate, and they give you this 2.7 plus 6 minus 2x when x equals 4. All you have to do is, in place of your x, substitute the 4 in for x. I'm hoping you know that the absolute value of 4 is equal to 4, and the absolute value of a negative 4 is also equal to 4. The absolute value makes it positive. So you get 2.7 here plus 6 take away 8 is the absolute value of a negative 2, but the absolute value of a negative 2 is 2. So 2 plus 2.7, final answer 4.7. So absolute value. This one, 7 minus a negative 2 plus absolute value 3 times a negative 2. And now just simplify this. You have the absolute value of 9 here plus the absolute value of a negative 6 here. The absolute value of 9 is 9, and the absolute value of a negative 6 is 6, so your final answer is 15. One more before the second template. We're going to do just one more, and if you feel like you already know what you're doing, you can skip ahead to the second template. Absolute value. In place of x, I'm going to put a 2, and in place of y, I'm going to put a negative 4 plus 5 times a negative 4. You're going to get 4 plus 4 inside the absolute value sign, and you're going to get a negative 20 on the outside. There is no absolute value. The absolute value of 8 is 8. Take away 20 equals a negative 12. That's the first part of the assignment. Now comes the second part of the assignment. How do you do equations using absolute value? So I'm going to write up here, you need 2 equations when you're doing this. You need 2 equations. Why do you need 2 equations? Go back to this. Because whenever you do absolute value, you usually have 2 answers. You can have a positive 4 or a negative 4. So the first thing you have to do is get the absolute value alone. So I'm going to get the absolute value alone by dividing both sides by 5, and I'm going to be left with a 3 on the right hand side. Once the absolute values alone, you can rewrite them with 2 different equations. The first one is exactly the same thing up there without the absolute value. And the second one is going to be x plus 12 equals a negative 3. You can either have a positive 3 or a negative 3. Very similar to this concept, a positive 4 and a negative 4. That's why you can have 2 equations. You subtract 12 and you're going to get x is equal to a negative 9 for one answer. And you subtract 12 and you're going to get negative 15 for another answer. Whenever you're doing absolute value and you're doing equations, you're going to have 2 answers. One could be a negative 9 and one could be a negative 15. What you can do, you could put this back up into the equation, you guys. And both of those should work in that problem. This one, the only thing I like to do is use the symmetric property and rewrite it so that my variable's on the left-hand side. My absolute value is already alone, so I can rewrite them. Y plus 5 equals 8 is one equation, and the other one is y plus 5 equals a negative 8. So y is equal to 3 for one answer, and y is equal to a negative 13 for one answer. I can plug 3 back in and it works, and I can plug in a negative 13 and it also works if you don't believe me. On this one, I'm going to get the absolute value alone first. This is a trick question. This could be on the ACT. When you take the absolute value of anything, it needs to be positive, and that's a negative number. There is no solution to this problem. You can't take the absolute value and get a negative answer. So that's kind of like a trick question. And now the last one. I'm not going to worry about it. This is not going to be on the test. So if you know how to do those first two problems, I'm just gonna write the steps. Step number one, you must get the absolute value alone. You must get the absolute value alone. Once you get the absolute value alone, you're gonna break it up into two equations and solve. So there you go for the notes.